you feel as though the South Korea situation with the declaration of martial law now reversed, and sort of the destabilization of what had been a stable government, it all stems back to Ukraine. I wonder if you can't also see it as something that is a rising tide across Europe. I mean, even in Germany, I was reading that the authoritarian party and authoritarian figures are rising in ways that people thought unimaginable after World War II.
I think that is part of a worldwide trend that goes back quite a ways. When I was traveling all over the country doing lectures 10 years ago, one of the things I would talk about was the authoritarians who were coming to power in various places and the move against democracy in a number of places. It was going on then. And I would say to audiences, this is like when after the plague, the Catholic Church lost its absolute grip on Europe. And we began to see the rise of not only Protestantism, but the printing press and the spread of knowledge. And these are social forces you can't stop. They have to play out like a tsunami. And so I would stand in front of audiences and say, there is a tsunami of authoritarianism that is on the rise around the world. And I would hold up my hand in front of the audience and say, and I'm standing here trying to stop it. And everybody would laugh because I think it has to play out. I think people need to, we have people in this country left and right who I'm sorry, wrong metaphor. We have a lot of people in this country who will say, the Nazis were right, speak in favor of them. There are a couple of surveys that have been done of high school students when they're asked in multiple choice, whose side did we fight on in World War II? And an enormous number of them pick with the Nazis against the Russians, the exact opposite of the truth. And we're not somehow transmitting the information about how the liberties of the people depend on a democratic society. And this is part of I think, a much broader trend. I mean, I've in the late 60s, when I went into the homes of very poor Black families in East Palo Alto, they all had a picture of Martin Luther King. It might have been torn out of a newspaper and somehow stuck on the wall, but it was a picture of Martin Luther King. If they were Catholic, they had one of the Pope and JFK, no matter how desperately poor they were. I've been in a number of homes now in Rochester. It's many, many years later, more than 50 years later. And I speak in the local high schools that are overwhelmingly minority, and young people are not being taught the civil rights movement. You ask, who's Rosa Parks? She wouldn't sit down on a bus. Yeah, it's the end of their knowledge. Who was Martin Luther King? I think it was some minister who got people to march. We're failing to pass on messages, and it's not limited to poor people of color. I've seen this in children of the Indian diaspora whose parents are highly educated, scientists, business owners, doctors, whose children don't know how Gandhi used a creative nonviolence to provoke the British and eventually got them to leave because
that's wild.
They don't know it. It's very
the degradation of of schooling and of education in America and beyond, I think, is an absolute relevant fact. But it's funny when you mention the 60s, David. I mean, that's a period of intense civil rights crises, the Vietnam War. I think of turmoil. I think of the ashes of American cities. That there were literally 5 American cities on fire at the time. Anyway, the point is that from that, I can see authoritarianism rising, like in your tsunami example, because it feels like there's a tsunami of unrest. But what's weird to me about this is I don't see in America, for example, that kind of tumult that would lead to the rise of an authoritarian dictator. And yet I see it happening in this country.
Well, and one of the best things for us in terms of Donald's desire to be our dictator, which I've been warning about for 9 years now, is his incompetence. It is one of the things that benefits us. He's not a competent manager. If he was a competent manager, you really need to be scared. But, proposing that Kash Patel become head of the FBI after he says, well, I take that Hoover building, the FBI headquarters, and I tell every one of those 7,000 people who aren't doing anything in that building, move them out in the country to fight crime, and the next day I'll turn into a museum of the deep state. He obviously doesn't understand intelligence, management, forensic science, data collection, all sorts of things that are essential to the FBI's two missions. One is certain crimes that are FBI jurisdiction, but half of the FBI is involved with national security and counterintelligence. And he has no clue. And if you're somebody who hates the U.S., and after all, there are millions and millions and millions of people who think the U.S. is the worst government in the history of the world, this is wonderful for you. I mean, this is like, oh, we can go try and pull another stunt like 9/11. We can go blow up a building. We can bring a dam down to drown a whole lot of people just because they're Americans. That's the signal being sent. And one hopes that at least 4 members of the U.S. Senate who are Republicans have enough sense to not allow that. But
they have a lot of stuff to turn down. You have Pete Hegseth as well, but I love that you mentioned Patel, because to me, he is an extremely dangerous figure in charge of a critical agency. I mean, again, all of these agencies are critical. DOD is the same thing. But I think it's his bombast, David. It's funny that you mention it, because I think that's the thing that Trump is really attracted to, his sort of unapologetic, these bald-faced notions he has.
Yeah, I mean, I think LTBT is the right philosophy right now. Let Trump be Trump, with maybe the exception of the FBI because of how important it is. But Donald loves people who thumb their nose at anything that's the established order. And Mark, for years, 35 of the 36 years I've known Donald, I've said Donald creates his own reality. Let me express that a different way. Timothy Snyder, the Yale historian who's an expert on authoritarianism, said the same thing the other day, but in a way that maybe will resonate better with people. He said, Donald Trump lives in a fictional world in his head. And the reason he never apologizes, he never corrects, he never changes, is because in his mind, since it's fiction, he just moves the story wherever he wants it to go. And that's the ingredient I think Americans don't understand. Now, Donald's very feral. If he feels like something will hurt him, he can turn on a dime. That's why I'm being cautious about the Ukraine situation and Putin. But Donald is not a creator. He's not a businessman. Businessmen create wealth, modest wealth maybe, or giant wealth. But that's what they do, businessmen and businesswomen. Donald is a cash extractor. He loots the businesses that he gets control of with other people's money. And when he can't loot them anymore, he just dumps the carcass and moves on. And he's going to burn down our federal government. And we have spent fortunes, finding and developing people in diplomacy, finding and developing a military officer corps that's highly professional, that has produced you can be a complete pacifist and you need to sit back and say, well, if you're going to have a military, this is a really professional military. And they're out to destroy all of that. And the proverbial chickens will come home to roast as they do it. If they round up people and then your food prices go up, we just have to hope people are smart enough to say, oh, wait a minute, maybe getting all those farm workers and throwing them out of the country wasn't such a good idea after all, because now my bread costs 3 times what it used to use one of Donald's examples, but from another food.
I was trying to remember the Sam Rayburn quote. I just found it because it relates to what you're talking about. Because it's easy to tear down the government. These guys, in my view, are governmental terrorists. I don't understand what the hell they're going to do, but I know they're going to do a lot of damage. And Rayburn said, a jackass can kick a barn down, but it takes a carpenter to build one. It is your point.
That's a great quote.
Yeah, you made me think of it when you were talking about that these systems have taken a long time. This government, admittedly imperfect, has taken a long time. So I want to get back to Patel for just a second, because he also started this nonprofit for J6 defendants, as you know. I mean, he's really in the belly of the beast. He even sells, pro-Trump merchandise. He has his own merchandise, Cash Patel. He's so much like a Trumpy that I think he could lead the Trump movement, way beyond Donald Trump.
Yeah, Cash Patel is the absolute most loyal lapdog for Donald, attack dog to everybody else in the whole crowd of folks. And well, he doesn't have the skill to run an organization like the FBI, which has, if I recall, 35,000 employees. That doesn't mean he can't mess it up badly. And when Patel comes in, and if Hegseth comes in, you're going to see other governments really hold back on sharing intelligence with us. The Five Eyes intelligence program, that's the US, Canada, the United Kingdom, Australia, and New Zealand, is critical to our national security, to your being safe. We already know that the other four countries have, throughout the Trump administration, held back on what they shared with us, and we're cautious because Trump had given away sources and methods. That is, how did we learn this and who did we learn it from? The CIA had to run some kind of operation that intelligence specialists in journalism have written about. So various people leaked these things to them, that they had to extract some people, including leaders of other countries who were our assets, and get them and their families out. And we're never going to hear a full accounting of this in our lifetime. We'll know about it when we're all dead 100 years. This will come out. But Donald Trump is a serious threat to American national security. And putting in people like Hegseth, who is an ideal candidate for blackmail and pressure, and Kash Patel, who has no idea what he's doing. He's just filled with Donald's rage to go destroy things. There's a really good cartoon about this by Jeff Danziger, the multiple Pulitzer Prize winning cartoonist, who's a friend of mine. It came out last night, and if you guys can find it, it'd be a great thing to put on your website, because he captures the Kash Patel role and what's going to happen with him. People should be very worried. So if we let Trump be Trump, hopefully things will get so bad that people will wake up and realize he's not who he says he is. He isn't doing what he said he was going to do. And we'll get a different Congress in 2 years.
Yeah, I think that's, if history's a guide, that's it. The Senate will do its confirmation dance. They'll either do it diligently or they won't. It'll likely be a partisan affair. But here's my question to you, because I feel your this guy Trump so well. I was saying before that on some level, the Kash Patel stuff, the Hegseth stuff, we saw it with Matt Gaetz, it becomes so, the reputational harm to Trump becomes something that he has to, at some point, get over. Like, he's just done with it. Like, that's what happened with Gaetz. I felt like, it was just like, enough with this guy. It's just too much controversy. I don't like the stink of him on me. My question to you is, will the stink from Hegseth or even from Patel, I don't think it's a different kind of stink. It's sort of an incompetent stink. Will that get to the point where Trump just lets go and says, you know what, this isn't worth it. Let me get some other guy.
Donald will support these people and appoint more people like them, so long as he thinks it solidifies his connection with the base and doesn't leave him vulnerable to attack by other people. Part of Donald's brilliant con artistry and conning people is also being very feral when it comes to being threatened. And he doesn't hesitate to dump people, although the cartoon that I recommended to you goes to, how these things happen. He doesn't go fire people, because Donald is, in the vernacular, a wuss on a personal level. So he will do this so long as he isn't feeling in any way threatened from the other things he wants to do. And then he'll turn on a dime. I thought it was a brilliant move by Saturday Night Live maybe 3 weeks ago to open the weekend update with Colin Jost by bringing up Hegseth and Patel and somebody else, and saying Donald Trump introduced the people he's going to fire in 6 months. Loyalty with Donald is a 100% one-way street. And as long as people begin to recognize that he just makes it up, he makes up facts, he makes up worldviews, he's got a problem. So long as he can keep a large segment of the population cowed, and most especially U.S. senators cowed, he comes out ahead. And that's going to be his effort, to diminish and attack. And you watch, he's going to go tooth and nail after the New York Times and the Washington Post. They're going to try to overturn the Sullivan decision that allows criticism of public officials. He's going to do all sorts of things that are anathema to historic America. But if you don't know that, if you think that we fought with the Nazis against the Russians 80 years ago,
sure.
Yeah. You can get away with that stuff.
He may turn Pam Bondi loose on those very organizations to which you referred.
Oh, he will. He will.
Hi, it's Mark, and I thought that was great. Hit the notification bell. You'll know whenever there's a new video being dropped, and please subscribe to our channel to help us save the universe.